What's up, everybody? It's SJU. We're back. Somehow they didn't see the other episode we did, and they let me do another one.
My God.
Billy Business, Cameron Rice, Vanessa Gritton, Ed Greer. Shameless plug time. I've got a podcast called Hot Takes with Billy Biz. YouTube been on it, and I need to schedule you to be on it, where we talk about hot takes. But today, it's all of our hot takes, baby. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the hottest takes, the hottest button issues from the decade, 2010, 2019. Not only are we going to look at them, we're going to fix them right here today. We have about 8 minutes a take to simmer down to...
piece of cake. No
that's
problem.
it. After we render our verdict on these hot takes of the decade, that's it. We can't talk about them anymore. The decision's final.
Sweet.
So these are things, we're going to be talking about some of the bigger stories, the ones that we talk about a lot. We'll get to The Last Jedi, but we're also going to go back. Some of the ones that maybe you forgot about, or the ones that your therapist helped you work through, and now we're going to open it up again. Let's start with number one. Now, this is one that has bubbled up since around 2010 with the release of Inception. It's only gotten more and more dangerous as the years have gone by.
Sweet.
Guys, is Christopher Nolan overrated? Some people love him, some people hate him, but I think 2010's Inception was kind of where it started, where it was, this man can do no wrong, he's a genius, was one camp, and then the other camp was, I can't believe this guy is so overrated, blah, blah, blah. Just where does everyone fall kind of on Christopher Nolan in general?
Wait, we gotta start the timer.
Go.
All right. I have swayed back and forth, and I have fallen on not necessarily over or underrated, but I think I did not care for Inception. I'm just gonna go right off the bat.
That's
I was
fair.
not someone that loved Inception. I loved a lot of the effects, and I loved a lot of some of the individual performances in Inception, but as a whole, I didn't love it. But for the longest time, I was on the Christopher Nolan is overrated train, and then I saw Dunkirk, and I took it back.
Interesting, because I feel like that's one of the ones that maybe a lot of people kind of fell off on.
Yeah.
I would say for Christopher Nolan, I wouldn't say he's over or under. I think that's kind of like an overused generalization.
Yeah.
I kind of take it on a movie-to-movie basis. I happen to love Inception.
Yeah.
I think that might be my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, but then there are some, like Interstellar, that I don't care for at all. So I take it movie-to-movie basis, but when you look at his whole filmography, to go from, The Dark Knight or something like The Prestige and then Inception, I think he has such big ideas that even if he swings and misses for me, I still really appreciate the swing.
Yeah.
I lean no. I think he's great. Not every movie is a masterpiece, but no filmmaker has 10 out of 10 across the board all the time.
Yeah.
Even the greats, there'll be one or two where you're like, ooh, that one wasn't good. But I never feel like he's lazy. I love that he cares. I love that he pushes film. I love that he's pushing IMAX and trying to make it the theater's an experience. Go to the theater.
Sure, yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I'll say this, I think in this day and age of memes and GIFs and clickables and everything has to tie into this and blah, blah, blah. The fact that Nolan does these very singular, here's the story and that's it. People get hung up on the plot. The this, the that. Right. And I'll be like, I don't know, man, he's making an experience. And how many filmmakers are doing that and doing it very well and doing it in a way that you can understand what's happening. And I know Interstellar is the big sticking point for a lot of people. I love the first 2/3 of that movie. I love what it's kind of reaching for and trying for. And that's the thing, I'd rather a filmmaker keep trying and reaching as opposed to doing their lazy, people would like this, I guess. He is somebody that's always going to seem to kind of go for it and also bring in kind of different, interesting actors. He might, Michael Caine might be in everything, or Tom Hardy, but he'll also we got Washington's going to be in the next one and stuff like that. I love that he's somebody who seems to be grabbing and working with different interesting actors, and he's also one of those few directors that seems to be able to go, I want to do an original story, it's going to cost this much, and studios go, okay.
Yeah. He's not boring.
He's not boring. And there's a lot of boring people out there.
Yeah, anytime there's a choice that he makes that I don't like, it's not because I was bored. Maybe it's just because I thought the story itself didn't merit that outcome.
Right.
That's how I feel about the ending of Interstellar, where it's just I feel like it's set up for something else.
Yeah.
But I'm not bored.
Yeah. Look, I don't want to be the guy who goes, but the way that he's seen as a superhero and an action filmmaker by certain people, certainly, yes, very much overrated in that. You know what I mean? I think him and Paul Greengrass and some of these guys ushering in the shaky cam, like even Batman, look at Zack Snyder made Batman do the best fight scene he's ever had. How did that happen? You had 3 shots. You had 3 shots, including a movie where Batman had to fight a dude for his very life. And you made that fight suck, and you make a lot of these different action scenes kind of suck, but they're practically done, so everybody gives you the continuous BJ, you know what I mean?
Well, I love the truck sequence in The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
When that truck splits, and that's real.
It's beautiful.
Not a digital truck. I'm not sitting there 10 years later going like, that truck looks fake.
No. You're right. And I love that scene as well. And then it connects right to Batman sort of just crashing his bike, getting an owie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's the guy who will, like, give you that.
Yeah.
And then Batman crashed his bike, get owie. You know what I mean? It's like, stop. Why'd you do that? You're like so close. You know, he's edging. You know what I mean?
I will say, like, even as someone who really likes Nolan, I think his strength is like tackling these really cerebral plots and these really intricate ways of framing everything. I think, and I would venture to guess, he would even admit himself, like, action is his weak point. I think definitely, like you said, that fight with Bane is just like almost like watching slap boxing, and you're just pulled back, and it's kind of the double-edged sword of the IMAX thing. I know he really wants to take advantage and show and not cut away, especially after the criticisms of Batman Begins. But it's like, split the difference, man. You know, if the first one was too kinetic, this one is just too static.
See, that split difference is why I like Dunkirk, because Dunkirk, not only did I get like that great atmospheric moments, like honestly, the sound on Dunkirk is incredible. You really just like feel it in your chest. You have those great atmospheric, like big wide war moments, but you also had those great, like, all right, now we're in on the human effect, and now we're in on a little bit more of like the intimacy between people as they like navigate wartime. It's why Dunkirk is what made me flip. It was that split difference for me.
Oh no, and I think that's what we need to do with our appreciation of them. I think this godlike level that we give way too many filmmakers, way too many people, way too many figures in the world, just they can be cool. They can be good. Like, to me, he's a guy who definitely understands atmosphere and can put you inside a world no matter how ridiculous it is, and that is a super skill. The fact that I believed that Batman would walk up into the precinct and talk to the Joker, that's cool. But he also featured the movie where Batman just walks up in the precinct past like the donut machine and the cigarettes, hell yeah, you still smoking? Gotta stop that. Let me enter this room and beat up the Joker real quick. That sucks so bad to me. But again, he's the guy who grounded it in a place where it's like, this is so realistic, I hate this part. So it's a double-edged sword with that guy, and he can boring up anything. Like,
King of the backhanded compliments.
But I do agree that his ability to do that and his ability to put you places, though, can be used to better affect outside superheroes and outside stuff. I just wish that it would have been the thing where he does maybe the first movie and then he oversees the rest of the Batverse. And
that's where I get Man of Steel.
But that's what. All I'm saying is we would have got 2 Batman movies with Batman kicking some butt before we got a horrible Superman movie. I'm just adjusting the timeline slightly.
All right, so we got to wrap this one up. Can we state that Christopher Nolan being overrated is probably an overstatement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know. Let me see any of these other filmmakers make The Prestige.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And have any of them make Memento? As much as that movie sort of falls apart with our 2019 eyes, to my eyes, it's the thing that he does best. Immersive. You're in this world.
Yeah.
It's totally ridiculous, but you buy it the whole way because he's done all the things to make you be with the character.
He's selling it.
Yes.
I think you just can't call him overrated at the fact that they are selling his new movie already just on the fact that it's a new Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
Not since Spielberg or Hitchcock can you just sell it on like, hey, this guy's making a new movie, doesn't really matter what it is.
I mean, how often do we get a new filmmaker that's an actual voice? These days, there's workmen, there's people you kind of plug and play, but a voice where, like you said, the ninth Tarantino film, the fact that means anything is monumental.
Yeah.
And Nolan is in an area where the whatever, eighth,
All right, done.
Peel.
Solved.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan, perfectly rated. Not over, not under.
Rated.
He is rated.
He is rated.
Oh, man, we were just jumping right into some heavy territory.
Internet come. I don't care. Tweet at me.
Tweet at him. 2017. This was actually a season of hot takes. We had Justice League come out, which we're still feeling the Snyder cut.
I'm so mad I'm here again.
But even this kind of takes the cake in terms of we are still talking about this, probably even more now than we were a little while ago with the Rise of Skywalker coming. Did The Last Jedi kill Star Wars?
No.
Ready, go.
No. There, we did it in less than 9 minutes. No.
If you're on the yes train, I hope you didn't tweet out any Baby Yoda gifts.
Honestly,
Because it's not a dead franchise.
Ewoks are they're too cute, and then all of a sudden, Baby Yoda everywhere.
Sipping tea, rocking baseball caps.
I can hear your teeth clenching.
They're so loud right now. They're grinding to a numb. Because you know what's gonna happen? It's what always happens. I say I like The Last Jedi, and then someone goes on my Insta stories and looks at a picture of my cat, and then they try and fight me on The Last Jedi. Just like the picture of my cat.
What's the correlation between your cat and The Last Jedi?
They just pick a thing.
Yeah, the fact that there isn't one. You know, I'm trying to put up a picture of my cat, and it's like, yeah, that cat's pretty cute. The whiskers are, that was a ruse. You suck.
Well, I think the thing is, let's just cut right through it. Many internet channels, not this one, but a lot of them out there, use the Kathleen Kennedy conspiracy theories and all this other stuff to get clicks, to get views, to get likes, to get the... No one's the people who are truly mad at this. And I'm not saying if you didn't like the movie, you can easily say like,
that's fine.
Hey, it wasn't for me. Here's why. A, B, C, D. Great. It's the people who go onto their internet shows and try to have their like, this proves it. This, that, and the other. Bring back this stuff. Blah, 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 blah. It's fake outrage.
It's fake outrage.
It's fake outrage for 2 years to get clicks and gifts and all these other things to make some money. This is the fake news.
Well, I think if the question is, did The Last Jedi kill Star Wars? I think there's kind of two factors here that we're talking about. One, I think you're talking about Solo, really. Did Last Jedi kill Solo, meaning did everyone just be like, well, I'm done with Star Wars now?
Yeah.
Which I don't think it had. It maybe Last Jedi dissatisfaction was a percentage of it, but there's so many factors we've talked about a million times. But the other thing that you brought up, which is, did Last Jedi kill Star Wars? I mean, we just ran a story the other day that The Mandalorian is the most in-demand show in the world, and Disney Plus hasn't even.
Did it kill Star Wars?
Okay, but here's where everybody knows what I'm about to say. Everybody knows where I'm about to go. Damn it. The only thing The Last Jedi killed was the adventures of the Laser Sword family. That's all it killed. It killed the fact that Star Wars has to be about this, basically their own little empire.
They're King Arthurs.
Yes, midichlorian dudes pulling lightsabers out of rocks and stuff so that they can be the chosen one. It killed the chosen one narrative to a great degree. It killed you have to be a Jedi or Jedi adjacent to be important in the universe thing a little bit. And it tried to egalitarianize that very concept of the Force. The fact that stable boys and bums and losers and freaking Dolomite on the street before you made it big, whoever, they all have access to the Force. Flip the records with the Force, Dolomite. Anybody can do it now. They've egalitarianized the Force, and that's what some of these wannabe 1%er punks who hate the fact that it's been taken from this one family. They hate that. They hate that the love's been spread. They hate it.
And here's the thing. Like the movie, don't like the movie. Honestly, everybody can have a completely different take. That doesn't bother me. But when you attribute one movie for destroying an entire franchise, you don't know how franchises work. Right. That's not... You really have to muck it up for one movie to destroy decades of a franchise and decades of future planning for a franchise.
And let's talk about why that is, though. They hate the thing about, let's get to Mark Hamill. They hate Luke. They hate Luke in it a lot. A lot. They talk about Rose. They talk about this. They talk about that. They hate Luke in it a lot because they wanted Luke to become the wizened best of the Jedi ever.
They wanted the Luke that was in a lot of, not all, but a lot of the EU, where he's kind of more of like a Clint Eastwood type. Like he goes into towns, he's gonna mow down some fools and leave. Which I'm like, that's cool and that's a power fantasy. I never felt that was Luke.
No.
Well, it's not just a Star Wars thing. There is this kind of thing that we're experiencing now where we don't want our characters to evolve so they become stale because we can't accept the fact that like, well, that's not that Luke from Return of the Jedi wouldn't do what Luke does in Last Jedi. It's like you're 100% correct. Return of the Jedi, Luke wouldn't do that because that was like 30 years ago.
That's
and
a
people
different
change in 30 years. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And I really loved your insight onto, you know, there's more like even just subconsciously the fact that the Force doesn't belong to the special. Now the Force belongs to everybody. And
if everybody's special, then nobody's special. All right, Dash.
But I think like to get back to the core of the question, because you're right. I think you can totally dislike the movie for very valid reasons.
100%.
People I love and respect who just don't care for it. But I think this statement that Star Wars is dead, another part of this was the attendance at Galaxy's Edge was down at Disneyland, California, where a lot of people, they raised ticket prices. They slashed the days that annual pass holders could go. People were afraid of these crowds. You know, again, it's kind of like the...
well, it's like Carmageddon when they were like, a couple years ago, when they were like, don't anybody get on the road. It's going to be chaos. Disney did the same thing. I love Disney, but Disney did the same thing. They were like, hey, maybe don't come here if you're not ready for it. So it's like everyone went, oh,
I definitely think there are studies
later.
like Star Wars toy sales are down. Toy sales are down for across
Everyone.
the board.
Yeah, and this is the third trilogy in a thing. Name me something else as maybe James Bond or something, which you can't, because those aren't trilogies at all, really. Third trilogy? There's time for some fatigue. This is totally natural. Looks so natural. Right. No one can tell.
Well, it also made $1 billion, and the critical response was great. And it's like that's the thing I think some people forget is like there's so much talk about it that I'm like, it still made $1 billion. Well, and the critical response was like it's got like a 90-something.
The argument that's just like insane. And if you don't like this movie, fine, but please don't use this one because it's dumb. It's like, but look how much Force Awakens made, and then it dropped off.
That always happens.
It's like, yeah, look at Phantom Menace to Attack the Clones. Look at A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back. Look at any second movie. It's very rare in these. It happens, but it's very rare that you get it. I think with Force Awakens, it was just like, it was an event more than it was a movie.
Yeah.
And the casual, even beyond casuals, were like, okay, I'll go see the Star Wars thing. But ultimately, since we have to wrap this one up, I think we could say, did The Last Jedi kill Star Wars?
No.
All right, hot take solved. We can now officially stop talking about Last Jedi. So yeah, I'm talking to you. You can stop. We're talking hot takes. But we're also going to talk real quick, hot off the press. If you guys didn't know, our Galaxy Quest documentary, Never Surrender, if you couldn't see it in theaters, don't worry, because now it's on iTunes.
Hooray.
Buy it on iTunes. You can watch it. Galaxy Quest, even though it's not a Christmas movie or a holiday movie, my brain ties into the holidays because I saw it in theaters when it hit in December of 1999. We got the whole cast back to talk about making that movie. As you know, we're just talking about Last Jedi, talking about fandoms. It's insane how this movie was made and just doesn't poke fun at the fandom, but celebrates it. I think this is like one of the best comedies, but also like one of the most uplifting comedies. And the making this movie was really cool. So Never Surrender, check that out on iTunes. That was really sentimental, so let's shed that as we go into number 3.
Oh boy.
I would venture to guess that a lot of this toxic fandom maybe has origins in this next one. We're going to go back in time now to the summer of 2016. Guys, did Lady Ghostbusters help or hurt? And I love that it's help or hurt what? The franchise? Life? I don't know. But did that Lady Ghostbusters, I kind of think this came out at a time, and I will try to keep politics out of your SJU, but I think Emma Fife and I talked about this when we were talking about Ghostbusters. I think this came out at a time where even as a country, every opinion, every thought, every feeling was just amplified. Everything was just, you felt it 10 times more, whether it was who you wanted to be president or when the McRib should come back. You felt it 1,000 times more. than you usually did. And Ghostbusters, this was kind of DOA. This thing has one of the most disliked ratios on a trailer when it dropped. What did you guys think of this movie? Did it hurt Ghostbusters as a brand? Did it hurt these female driven films in general?
I'm gonna give if you tweet at me, I will release.
You tweeted me.
If you tweet at Cameron, if you tweet at me,
I don't care.
I will release bees into your car.
You are the candy man.
I will personally release bees into your car. Sometimes a movie comes along where I don't really have like a strong negative or positive feeling about it, but I do see the actual legitimate effect that it has. Right. And I'm saying help because here's the thing. I didn't love it, and I did see issues with it. Like with a lot of reboots, it had its issues. It was still a fun popcorn movie, but it absolutely helped the franchise, and here's why. My niece is 9. She has an entire little group of friends that all know what the Ghostbusters are and love the franchise and are now buying the costumes, buying the games, buying the toys because this was their entry to it. And it may not be their only one. They watch this movie. They love this movie. They learn that there are other ones. They started watching the original Ghostbusters. There's a group of 9-year-olds, and honestly, all of the kids in her school, they all dressed up like Ghostbusters this year because they also saw those kids on Stranger Things and were like, those were the Ghostbusters costumes. This reinvigorated the franchise for a new generation that otherwise wouldn't really have access to it. They now are like, oh, I like the one with the painting. Oh, but I like the Stay Puft one. They now know the different movies. This was the entry point for so many kids. So even if you didn't like it, even if you did like it, regardless, it did help because it was a new entry point for a younger generation.
Yeah. And I would just add one thing to that because that was magnificent. Jesus, Peter O'Toole and that fucking news. Anyway, so
Vanessa of Arabia over here.
That was amazing. And last things last, I don't think you would have had this new one with all the boys back in town like you wanted. You wouldn't have that if these guys hadn't attempted to do this one with the women. I don't think the interest would have been drummed up. I don't think you wouldn't get the things you want if this didn't happen.
Oh boy.
What happened to come at me, bro?
No. I know. I'm just trying to think of how to navigate this.
This is Dirty Harry pulling out his gun. It's always slow. It's like,
I'm trying to think of how to navigate this. I am of the opinion as more time goes that Ghostbusters should have just been the one and done single film. I think the original film I think is amazing. I think it's so whip smart in its sarcastic dialogue. It does the horror comedy thing right of taking the horror seriously. Everyone reacts to the horror like this is horrific, while still being very funny. It does the great 80s thing of we're going to do, has anyone's ever seen Silver Streak or those kind of movies where it's we're doing a murder mystery, but we took funny people in the murder mystery. But the murder mystery stuff is treated very seriously, and that's when those movies elevate. I think these 4 comedians are amazing. I think a studio grabbed onto something and marketed it. I think this is the prequel of Ghostbusters films. It has no character arcs. It looks bad visually. It's a great director, great cast. And it's awesome that young kids get into it. But we were talking outside. Young kids love the prequels, and we're all fine to admit they're not good.
They are not.
And I think this movie is not good. I think, and I don't blame them. They were very open in the making of this movie about sometimes we just let the camera go for 50-minute long takes and just let them do improv. And I'm like, that's not the Ghostbusters. And I'm not saying what is the Ghostbusters. It's only one movie, 2 movies. But there's a degree of and they should not have gotten the hate. The vitriol that was there was gross and disgusting. It should have just been talked about as a movie. And did it work or not work? And so, story of mine, I went with a girlfriend I was seeing at the time, and she leans into me before the movie and goes, hey, if I cry or get emotional, please don't make fun of me. And I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't. And that's how pumped she was for this movie. The movie ends, she leans over and goes, what a waste of our time.
No. What a bummer day. Please tell me you at least got her movie candy.
I did.
Oh, thank God.
Did that end the relationship?
No. Rogue One did.
Excellent.
But I think that's the thing. And again, like, I do not blame the cast. I don't even necessarily blame Paul Feig. I think this was an era where Sony Pictures, I don't give a shit, was making so many Adam Sandler movies and jamming them full of cameos. Ozzy Osbourne's in this. He's going to do Sharon. Remember Sharon?
Right.
That was 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Sharon! And Coca-Cola ads and Papa John ads and ads and ads and ads. And then people are like, oh, this movie's politicized. And I'm like, it's an Adam Sandler movie.
And if we're going to talk about the non-politics of it, I just think non-politically, you know me, I like fights, I like effects, I'm a real, true, jerk that way.
Yeah.
And the effects were pretty bad. I liked some of the performances. I like this and I like that.
Leslie Jones is great. Leslie Jones is the only person reacting to the scary shit.
Right, exactly. And so I feel as though, more in certain directions, making the story better, this, that, and the other, but when you go down to the practically we're shooting these proton packs at ghosts, I didn't believe 1 second of any of it, and it ruined it. And also, we don't appreciate how hard it is to approximate that style of filmmaking. All of those things were either low grade CGI or optical, mostly just optical.
Yeah.
All of those effects. So the fact that it didn't match. Yeah, the fact that it didn't match. The fact that you can't even get that sort of weird '80s screen tone. Like cinematographers have a hard time approximating that look right now.
Yeah,
it's hard. We might not even have the equipment to approximate that.
And the fact
anymore.
that the third act turns into an action movie, which is like Ghostbusters was never the joke of Ghostbusters was it's like 3 schlubby plumbers who it's like there's the joke of like Ghostbusters, the music's playing, and then it cuts to them like walking up the stairs being like, look at this 23rd floor, I'm gonna throw up. They were not action movies.
It's why it makes sense that Leslie Jones felt like the only one that was like the in-universe one.
Yes.
Like if you're gonna have an expert, do the Ghostbusters thing of like have the expert. The expert and then the 3 guys, because then you're not lost in the you don't have that effect where since you have a room full of experts you don't really have like that everyman to latch onto, and that's why Leslie should have happened sooner. She's your Fry, she's your Fry and your Futurama, she's your I don't know the hell these 3 are talking about. I need my everyman to latch onto so that I know how I'm supposed to be reacting to these things.
Well, and the thing is, like, the whole point of the original film, and this was because if anyone is familiar with Dan Aykroyd's original script, it is apparently insane. It takes place in the future and in space. Yep. And Harold Ramis and Ivan Reitman had to come in and go, why don't we do like a making a business story?
Yeah.
And it's in modern day New York, not in the future and on the moon. And Dan Aykroyd's like, okay. There was never a sense of them making a business in this movie. Like, as much as this is straight up a remake, where it's like, oh, it's not a library that's haunted at the beginning, it's a little museum, but then they're kicked out of the college, all this other stuff. There's not a sense of like, what is this business? Why did Leslie Jones quit her job at the train station? Like, is there a job here? Like, what is the... There's so many like little questions, and I know people want to be like, it doesn't matter. Girl power, Papa John's pizza, Ozzy Osbourne. And I'm just like, no, these things matter in film. Whatever the film is, whoever's in the film. Right. I'm like, these are little... It's a movie that dies the death of 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, what's the business? Who's doing what?
For
Why?
me, it's... And this is the reason why I like the 2014 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I do too, actually.
I like the G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra, the first one. I just... not really a Ghostbusters fan.
Yeah.
I tried to watch the OG when I was a kid, just wasn't into it, never watched them. I didn't come into this movie with a lick of baggage. I didn't even know what was an homage and what was like a direct ripoff. I was like, it's just a movie. And I had a really good time while I watched it.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember a single sequence after I watched it the next day, but I had fun while I watched it. I think for me, this just isn't worthy of staunchly defending it or worthy of like going to war to tear it down.
But like you said, we've entered the era where you gotta have which of these hills do you want to die on? Right. Now everybody has to die on a hill, and you got to just pick one.
I just walked out and I was like, that was fun. And then I didn't realize that like Hiroshima was happening.
Cool guys don't look at explosions.
And here's the thing: it's like if the question is, did Lady Ghostbusters help or hurt? That's in general, it's just on a pure visibility angle, help. Because why were we talking about it
like
otherwise?
You said, you're certainly getting another one. I think
it gave me a 4K release of the original, which looks so good.
I'll say this might be a split one. I think it helped the brand of Ghostbusters, but it hurt kind of the discourse of talking about the movie, because for at least that year you weren't talking about the movie, you were talking about everything around that movie. So we'll leave this one as a split decision on that one.
And again, please feel free, come at me.
He won't put bees in your car. I'm tired.
If you're wondering, we're getting into some heavy hitters here. Oh boy,
Here we go, baby.
Number 4. Remember when I brought up that Snyder cut earlier? So this is the most. This goes all the way back to around. I would even call it like 300, but we'll call it really around 2000. I'll call it 2011.
Yeah.
With what was the name of that movie? It was the original one.
Oh.
You know which one I'm talking about? And the girls like would dance as strippers, but then
Sucker Punch?
Sucker Punch. I think it really started around Sucker Punch, and then Man of Steel and Batman v Superman amplified. But let's just blow the lid off this one, and once and for all, is Zack Snyder the best, the worst, or somewhere in between?
I'm gonna go.
As a filmmaker,
Yes.
I'm gonna go in between. And here's why. I because we said with Nolan, I like the fact that he's able to kind of do things. I like that Zack Snyder is a guy. No one can ever call him. I don't know what other word to use here, but it's like lazy or a coward as far as filmmaking goes.
100%.
There's nothing, no safe choices. You're doing Dawn of the Dead, a remake of like a beloved, one of the most beloved horror movies. You're following that up with doing Watchmen, the impossible film. You're doing 300. Like you're doing every shot he takes is like, man, you got to nail this.
Big swings.
And I appreciate a filmmaker who's going to do that. I think and so and there's visual stuff I really like. There is stuff I do like in Man of Steel. I think the issue is that because we live in such an IP heavy world, I think if Zack Snyder was around in like the 70s and 80s, people would be like, man, this guy's amazing. And there are people who think he's amazing, but I think it's such an IP world that some of his like ideas have to go onto IP that maybe those ideas don't gel with. If that makes sense. And I don't mean visually. I mean these kind of Ayn Randian sort of things that I'm like, well, that's not DC, but okay. But if he was like in the 70s and 80s doing like, here's my original stuff, we might watch it now and go, ooh, how weirdly problematic. But there's something about it. Like Paul Verhoeven gets to make a very opposite political spectrum, but he gets to make RoboCop and Total Recall and all this other stuff. But if Paul Verhoeven got his hands on like Ant-Man, that'd be messed up, but I think there'd be a degree of like, I don't know if this is appropriate for Ant-Man. Why are they sharing a bathroom?
Right, and far be it from me, I really do hate the whole workman-like aspect of sometimes in Marvel. Like Marvel has the A team, which is the Russos, and then they got a bunch of B teamers who are fantastic, but they are the B team, and they're treated as such, and it seems like they go like, you could do this. This is your one, but we have this previs that we did 10 years ago. We're going to put that in the middle of your movie. Here we go. You know what I mean? Like
it becomes traffic control.
Yeah, they're doing traffic control. So I hate to argue for that, but damn, I wish there was some fat person with a stop sign and an orange vest in Zack Snyder's lab, like air traffic controller. Just maybe everybody shouldn't be muted. Bring it on in. Bring it on in. Maybe everybody shouldn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. Everybody shouldn't be a sepia tone postcard from the wreck of the Titanic. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that Zack Snyder is one of the most gifted visual storytellers that is currently working. I think if you were to pair him with like an amazing writer, and because a lot of times, you know, I just don't think he understands or interprets certain story beats well. Like I do think that structurally a lot of his films, it's like, this feels out of place, or I'm not quite sure where you're going with this. But I feel like almost like if I don't want to say co-director, because then that makes it sound like a demotion. But I feel like if you partnered Zack Snyder with like a Zack Snyder, Aaron Sorkin kind of weird mixture.
Well, that's the thing. Like Dawn of the Dead was James Gunn.
Yeah.
And so it's like I think that's those things. Like I kind of like Zack Snyder to me is like the non-horror Rob Zombie. In that I'm like, I love how your stuff looks visually. I love the grunge of it. I love how you just you swing for those friggin' fences, Rob. But is everybody a Southern redneck? I'm like, man, I kind of wish you had like a co-screenwriter that'd be like, Rob, this is called an arc.
Well, it's like the Robert Rodriguez where it's like Sin City looked so cool and was awesome, and then he went and he's like, I can do this by myself, and did The Spirit, which is the weirdest.
Oh, Frank Miller.
Oh, sorry, Frank Miller. Yeah, which is the weirdest movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, he definitely needed a Robert there to be like, okay, dude, this is how we're going to interpret this for actual, this medium.
So I can't say that, like, to say that he's the best or the worst is just like, I think that's dumb on either side.
Yeah.
But I think he's my blanket statement is I think Zack Snyder is one of the most incredible like visual storytellers.
Snyder, I like that you brought up Rob Zombie, because there's actually a different director that I was thinking about this the other day that I cannot remember who I was talking about, but Snyder and Zombie have this thing where they are such legitimate like fanboys of the materials that they touch, but because of that, things become a little bit too formulaic, where they're like, I know the beats of the things that I like, but I don't know why they're there or how they get there. I just know that they're there. So it feels very like going through the motions, and it's the sucker punch thing over and over again, which is, I'm not in the camp of like best or worst, but it's Sucker Punch is visually amazing looking. Like a lot of the musical sequences, cool as hell. But they don't know, and these are both of these guys, they don't know what makes people and why people. They don't know why people react to certain things. They don't really know how they get there.
They know how to have a sexy looking lady standing center screen in some tight stuff and make you go like, wow, that's really good looking, but not understand what that effects means within the story, in between the scenes.
But see, and that's why I when you were saying visual storyteller, I just wanted to be like no. The storyteller is reserved for people who tell stories. He's a visual stylist. That's amazing. And I think we run into the Jan de Bont effect. People don't really know about Jan de Bont, but Jan de Bont directed Speed, which he did a yeoman's great job. That's a great, it's a great movie
too, right?
Yeah, and Twister.
And he got scalped on Roar.
He did.
Yeah, he got scalped on Roar, exactly. But he's the DP of Die Hard. He's the DP of some of these things that are just so amazing.
Yeah.
And like him, he could have been, I'm of the tribe, there's a few of us, a bunch of thousands, who think he probably could have just kind of been John McTiernan or some great director's DP and had a brilliant career.
Like
rather than
Attendees.
That was like when Wally Pfister, who does all of Nolan's movies, did that weird Johnny Depp one on his own. I was like, ooh.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I'm telling you, people, being a DP, you're still basically directing, dude. I'm not trying to disrespect any director, but you have to, just like the director knows where things have to be, where your lights are. You have to work with your gaffers to make sure everything's going to read properly. You have to know all of these stylistic and visual things, and then just leave like how we're going to stage things to somebody else. Because I think even some of his action staging is kind of shoddy. Some of the super speed Superman when he's fighting and stuff. I know there's people who could use better techniques to make that get over.
Yeah.
But stylistically, it's like that's how it's a weird effect that he's putting on certain things. Sucker Punch, like you said, fighting a giant samurai robot with Gatling guns and all that, but he has no idea why it's there, and that's why he made all those things fantasy sequences. And what we end up with is scenes we're supposed to care about emotionally rendered exactly the same as utter fantasy sequences with no consequences, no real human drama, and no that ruins everything.
So, wrapping this up, the question being, is Zack Snyder the best, the worst, or somewhere in between? I think that's the wrong question to ask, honestly.
At what?
I think the question is, like, is Zack Snyder, like, if Zack Snyder isn't the best or the worst, I don't think anyone's the best or the worst. I think they're like, that's just kind of like again one of those, like, I don't think a blanket statement applies. I just like I said with Christopher Nolan, I take his movies as they come. I really like Man of Steel. There's stuff about it I don't like, but God, there's like 15 Spielberg films that I think are so garbage that I would rather watch.
Hot take, Sally. It leaped out of my body.
Hot take, Sally.
I mean, it's just like you know,
Jason Hart in Part 9.
Oh my God.
if Spielberg can make The Terminal, then I think anyone's capable of making a great and or a terrible movie. So I don't think Zack Snyder should be praised on an altar, and I don't think he should be, you know, torn down either.
Just all Zach has to do is go kick it down at the WGA. Somebody walking out to get lunch and dropping off their papers. Just chat him up, and I'm quite sure you'll come up with a better story than some of this last couple things.
Yeah, we just got to find a good place for him. He just hasn't found.
Slot him in.
Well, he's got a
place.
zombie movie coming next year on Netflix.
Dude, and you know what? I bet you that's going to be badass.
Yeah.
Straight up, I kind of know that movie's going to be badass.
I feel it in my core.
Yeah.
I feel it in my core.
Yep.
All right, guys, we're finally here to 2019, the year of our Lord, 2019. Season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, was Game of Thrones final season an epic fail to the point where can this franchise, do you think it's in trouble? Can it recover from this? A lot of dissatisfied people.
Okay, I'll go first on this because I don't. Number one, I'm widely outspoken as like not really understanding the show, not understanding how people can get so into this casually cruel, not even fantastical. Oh God, it should be Lady with the Dragon show, but these damn dragons is hell expensive. So let's do a bunch of cruelty and horrible seeds and tent problems. Let's just say just a bunch of stuff in this thing that people like, and they'll tune in for appointment television to see these people just soaked and muted and beaten and dragged and this and that. I just don't get it. I don't get the appeal. I don't understand it at all. Fantasy with no fantasy, don't get it at all. But I will say this:
I mean, there were dragons.
you can't. Yeah, they were sparingly like a mug. No, but again, I'm outside of it. So all I'm saying is, epic fail. The last season, I'm gonna draw heat. It's all that stuff seems the same to me, man. Some of it was too fast. I get that, but like, epic fail. It's just, why would you start out on a? You're not Indiana Jones Part 2. Don't go out on a bridge that ain't even finished. You know what I mean? This concept that they started making this thing before it was finished, that was doomed to failure to me.
They probably thought they were okay, though. They were like, oh, we got 9 years. He's only got 2 more books.
I mean, you're right about that.
They're even like, oh, well, we'll take a year off between seasons. George, do your thing. He's like, okay.
Like, do whatever you want.
Here's what I'll say about this final season. As someone who watched from the beginning, I think I slowly started to fall a little out of love with it, especially the last 2 seasons. This season definitely felt, it felt different. It felt rushed. It felt like the show had senioritis. Like it knew the last day of school was coming. It was just like, okay. I think, was it an epic fail? I mean, like statistically, mathematically, if I can point to something, yeah, I think it was. It would be Comic-Con. They were going to do this panel with Benioff and Weiss, and it was going to be their victory lap. And then people hated this so much that they canceled it. They pulled out. They're like, never mind. We don't there's no point of us coming and doing a victory lap if people are just going to throw, tomatoes at us.
And then they pulled out of doing that Star War. And it was so funny how even people reported the different things like they weren't kind of the same thing. Why would you if you just got off of Game of Thrones, why would you put yourself right back in the lion's mouth? They Kobayashi Maru'd themselves where it was a no-win. Plus, I'm sure Netflix was like, hey, you're not making something for Disney if you're exclusive to us now. That's not happening. But I definitely
there's probably
think,
factors.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of factors, but I definitely think I think it was a failure. I think I think that the season was okay, but that finale was just like, I understand you can't be all appeasing to the fans and end it, in a fan fiction-y way, but nothing felt earned to that point. Like it felt like they had just taken their sweet time building things and then to just kind of like knock the Jenga tower down. I'm just really mad that Luke Skywalker didn't kill Cersei Lannister. Can we just talk about that? He didn't,
I think for me, it's a funny thing of like having because I really did love the show, and I think I'm two minds of it a little bit. Is that I think the biggest issue with the last season or 2 seasons was that the characters didn't necessarily feel like the characters fully, in that the characters always kind of danced in the gray. Like, Tyrion was always going to be like really smart and kind of conniving, and there was going to be a degree of like, oh, Tyrion's going to probably maybe like at the end probably do some stuff that's like, oh shit, but he is a Lannister. But fans fell in love with Peter Dinklage, and everyone loved Peter Dinklage. So by the time they're getting to the last 2 seasons, they're like, well, what if Tyrion's just straight up a good dude?
You know,
and there's a
like?
lot of that kind of stuff where people weren't dancing in the gray as much.
I felt like if you watched the Aladdin cartoon, and then you watched the cartoon show, and you're like, I guess this is kind of Aladdin. Like, all the same people are here, but it's not quite. It's not
Something's
quite.
wrong.
Yeah. I think Game of Thrones season 8 is like the return of Jafar of the Game of Thrones. Like, all right, I guess that's kind of it. Like,
King of Thieves is dope, though.
Because they got Robin Williams back.
But
that's
I think
why.
there's also a degree too. Is like I put out a tweet about this when Game of Thrones was wrapping up, and people were before the show even finished. People were having their hot takes about like, oh, that's awful. And I was like, is there a fantasy or sci-fi show that ends on its own terms that wasn't canceled that people love? And I said, everyone hated the end of X-Files, end of Lost, end of
Battlestar.
Everyone's like, Battlestar's great until the last season. And I'm always kind of like, is that an issue of doing a TV show that is like a fantasy or science fiction kind of thing where people are building their own endings or doing all these other things? And I said, really, the only shows that like seemingly ended on their own terms that were able, people were like, I dug that, is like Next Gen.
And they do it
Fringe?
on such a soft note, Next Gen, because they're like, oh, like, we're not retiring, just we're not going to show you any more of our adventures.
And they at least had Deep Space Nine going at the same time.
Right,
like, every other science fiction, fantasy, and some people were tweeting at me like, what about Justice League cartoon? And I was like, fair. I said, but I'm taking more like live action, appointment television. You're talking with your friends. Here's my theories, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, none have ended satisfyingly to people. And I said, if I was like a creator of a science fiction show or something, and HBO's like, we want to give you 2 more seasons, I'll be like, oh, can you cancel me? Because then people, your Fireflies, everything else, people will be like, this show was genius.
It was yanked from us too fast.
It got yanked away.
But again, it goes back to the point I was saying, man. Indy, cover your heart and don't go out on a bridge that ain't finished. Don't tear apart a bridge you're standing on. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. If you have an end, you can make sure everything, every single scene on certain levels can tie into that end. But if you do not have one and you're forced to find out on the fly, anybody who's ever written a screenplay, the ending you came up with on the fly sucks, and you know it.
Yeah.
I have a question as an outsider, because I really did try to watch the show, but the only thing I can really get into is they have really pretty pie crusts.
Sure.
Not a euphemism?
No, like really pretty. Like anytime I saw a pie, they were like really beautiful cold water pie crusts. No, sorry, hot water pie crusts. They're pretty.
So someone was going to be in the comments like, that's not the right pie crust.
They're hot water pie crusts. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the one thing from this episode that people are going to tell you.
Like, I was on
What
board.
a stupid idiot. Get her off your channel. She doesn't even know.
Where's that photo of her cat?
Like,
I'm pretty sure they're hot water pie crusts.
I'm pretty sure.
They're beautiful. That's all I really got from it. I tried watching the show. I couldn't get into it. The pie crusts are lovely. But as an outsider who did not watch the last season and only liked their pie crusts, do you feel like it was a combination of fan response and the ending, or was it more one or the other that killed it?
I think a combo. I think
it's perfect storm-esque.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect storm. It was like the last appointment television show. It was the last show that like started that people were like, I gotta watch this. That was on like week to week, because like right when it started, like Netflix was a thing, but there wasn't like. Oh, now it's like there's so much that it was kind of the last one, so there's a lot of stuff on there. I mean, Benioff and Weiss have kind of openly talked about that. They were like, yeah, we were kind of ready to be done. They didn't have an ending, and then George R. R. Martin, I guess, it sounds like he gave him just like a beat sheet of the ending.
Yeah, and that's what people are going to pop up in the chat, talk about, well, no. George R. R. Martin from Mordor, wherever he lives, sent a raven and dropped off the beat sheet. The raven dropped the beat sheet. It was very clear in blood ink. Okay, no, that's not true. It probably was like a napkin. Like Joe Esterhaus sold the screenplay on a napkin. You can do that, but that is not the same as building something.
Thrust it.
But you know what I'm saying? That's not the same as building something.
I don't think. I think whatever spinoffs, whatever they do in the future, I think you can't capture lightning in a bottle twice the way that the first series did.
Yeah.
So is Game of Thrones was the last season an epic fail? I'm voting yes. I'm going to say it was. I'm going to say it tainted a lot of people's perception of that show, for better or for worse.
I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to stick with my thing that every science fiction fantasy show that gets to
can't
end.
Stick the landing. Yeah.
So Stranger Things, stop at 4. Just say you got canceled. Go out now, Duffers.
Epic fails.
Epic fail because you didn't have an ending. If you had an ending.
You don't have to vote if you don't want to.
I mean,
vote on that pie crust, yeah.
For the pie crust,
Major success.
Major success on the pie crust. They look amazing.
Well, leave your comments below if you want Vanessa to know how wrong she is about her pie crust knowledge. Yeah, I don't want to hear about any of the other topics we discussed.
I will have a pie crust discussion with you. I will.
With bees.
Well, that was a show. We did it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Cameron Rice, Vanessa Gritton, Ed Greer, Billy Business. You insert your own name, and we will see you guys probably in the new year, or maybe it already is New Year. We'll see you sometime. Bye. Go. Get out of here.
Go.
Go.
Leave.